Hi everyone, no major news today, so let's get straight into the charts. You can see we are still in this clear consolidation, still holding support, and still cannot break out. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. Moving over to the put call ratio, down to a 70 from a 73. This continues to trend a little bit lower here over the past couple days. We'll see if this continues to move here. We've hit extreme greed a few times. That's usually a topping pattern, kind of where we are right now in this consolidation. Momentum, still extreme greed. Strength continuing to trend lower. Interesting. Back into neutral. Breadth also trending a little bit lower. We talked about that yesterday being very interesting. Still extreme greed here, still at a very high level with these higher lows and higher highs. But now it seems like we're kind of establishing a lower high, waiting to see that change in structure. Put call ratio, still in the same area. Did jump up a little bit here over the last day or two, but not a lot, still in regular greed. And then looking at volatility, still sitting on the SMA, no change there, still in neutral. Safe haven demand, extreme greed, junk bonds, still extreme greed. Moving over to seasonality, you can see this is sideways choppy. We haven't really been talking about this every day, but sideways choppy in here for a normal year. This week was actually supposed to be down for an election year. I think this is going to be pushed back. I still think we're going to see this pushed down, but it could be next week or maybe the end of this week. Right now, we're seeming to see, it looks like we're getting the non-election year, which is sideways choppy action, into a slight dip. Moving over to the earnings calendar, GE Aerospace missing on the top line, beating on the bottom. Philip Morris beat on both. Verizon missing on the top line, beating on the bottom. Lockheed Martin, same thing. Starbucks. It says they haven't released their earnings, but I saw some articles saying that they really struggled and they withdrew their forward guide. 3M released this morning. They crushed it. They were up a lot. We'll take a look at that chart later. General Motors beating on the top and bottom. Very good for them. Beat pretty good on the earnings as well. More than 50 cents there. And then you can see Invesco meeting on the top and bottom line. Overall, pretty good day. For tomorrow, you do have Tesla, Coca-Cola, T-Mobile, IBM, Thermo Fisher, Services Now, NextEra Energy, AT&T, Boeing, General Dynamics, and that'll pretty much wrap it up with Tesla being the big one. It's going to be interesting to see how they do after their Tesla day, the big drop that they had, and see where this pushes the stock. Moving over to Max Pain, stock price 583, and you can see Max Pain for the Friday session 580, so still just a little bit above that Max Pain level. Not a lot, but a little. And then looking at the charts, you can see it's negative all the way through the end of the week with a slightly bigger drop into the Friday session with a bounce on Monday. And then once we get into the end of a week from Friday, that's where it starts to get a little bit scary. I do think markets are going to move lower, and I do think this is a little bit of foreshadowing of that event. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps, you can see we continue to hold this support and continue to bounce. We're falling a little bit after hours. 9 EMA in there at 581.78. Momentum fading, RSI fading. I do think it's going to break eventually, but so far we've broken up to the upside, waiting to see if we can hold this support in here and rally. I think that seems unlikely at this point. And if this structure breaks in here, 21 EMA at 575.77, and then below that you have the 55 EMA all the way down at 560.51. And then looking at that short time frame, you can see that bounce on the structure, which is the same level in here. Held the trend, held the 144. These EMAs are continuing to consolidate. Eventually, they are all going to get into this range, and then it's going to break down, in my opinion. 200 sitting down there at 578.82. And then my level in here, 579.78. If these structures start to break down, that's obviously going to be a change in structure. We've been bullish for a while, and it seems likely we're going to get at least a little bit of a pullback, probably at least down to this 574.71 level. Moving over to the Tasty charts here on the 4-hour, you can see we are still in the middle of the range. We've been here for a while. Nothing's really changed. Support's been the 34 EMA at 581.68. Tested that level, caught a bit of a bounce, down a little bit after hours, waiting to see if that holds again. ATR trailing stop, probably going to get tested soon, 579.91. Still technically bullish conditions, not a ton of volume. If that structure breaks, your next support is the 89 EMA down at 576.79. Again, I think this is going to roll. I think it's just taking its sweet time to consolidate before that happens. Moving over to the NASDAQ, really the same thesis. It was positive on the day. 54 cents on the day, not a crazy move, 0.11%. Momentum, flat, RSI, flat, down a smidgen after hours. Basically in the same consolidation, really no change. Continuing to chop on this midline. really not holding as support, price not respecting that area. Next support to the downside would be the 21 EMA at 489.26. But as long as it holds in here, it's certainly possible that we get a consolidation continuation. That is definitely potentially possible. All of the EMAs and SMAs except for the 9 EMA are to the downside. We continue to step on that 9 EMA, which is not a great indicator. Usually you want to see it hold support and then continue up. Right now it's chopping on top of it, just like this trend line. So that's a little bit of a bearish indicator for me as well. And then looking at the short term here, you can see we did hold a slightly higher low at the level 492, continuing to be support. Tested it here on Thursday, didn't touch it Friday. Monday held the level, Tuesday held the level. You can see it's holding up a little bit here, right at the trend. If it holds this and pushes, 498.44 is the upside. We did make a slightly higher high from the previous high, if you even really want to call it that. Again, daily chart definitely showing consolidation. Hourly showing a very slight bullish trend. RSI holding above the SMA, seeing a little bit of a swing there. Maybe we get some follow through on that. But right now, momentum not super great on either chart, and it still could go in either direction. No change to the support or resistance levels for the NASDAQ. And then looking at the Tasty charts here for the NASDAQ, you can see this is still bearish conditions. Even though we continue to trend towards it, your ATR trailing stop is 498.05. So if we do hit that level that we just talked about, that would be a change in structure here. Right now, this is a consolidation at the high in bearish conditions, so you would expect it to break down. But again, you can see this 4-hour chart ATR bands, seeing a little bit of a swing up here on the lower bands. Upper bands, slight swing up with a bit of a crimp top there. Doesn't look as good on the upper band. Lower band swinging up, a little bit of volume there as well. NASDAQ seems to look a little bit better than the SPY, at least on the shorter term charts. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, the Russell was down 0.38. We expected a little bit of fall, and it came right to the level we talked about, 21 EMA, 220.41. Ended up bouncing from that level, but it did close below the 221.49 level, so we're still in this zone. I'm watching it closely. I ended up leaving this position on after we saw this zone in here holding as support. You can see my alert was right there at the level. Touched it briefly and then caught a bounce. It's falling a little bit after hours, but we're still here waiting to see what happens. If this level breaks, my next is all the way down at 218.13. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. It's probably going to go, but just being patient with it. And then looking at the Dow, had a big down day yesterday, but ended up flat today, down just 6 cents, 0.01 on the day, right at the 9 EMA as resistance at 429.49. So we broke that 9 EMA. Your support is now 426.20, and then you have trend support just below that around 425.50. Momentum rolling down, RSI still rolling down. Again, expecting this to break down eventually, but we're waiting for these EMAs to consolidate on these medium time frames. Moving over to the Mag 7, the Mag 7 caught a pretty decent move, $2.23 on the day, or 0.8%. Most of this coming from Microsoft, in my opinion. Momentum swinging, RSI swinging. Maybe we get a little bit of a continuation here. Interesting, strong candle. Didn't really see the NASDAQ go with it. It did move in that direction, but not a whole lot. And the SPY was actually down despite the Mag 7 going a little higher. So interesting to see it. We're back above the 21 EMA, which was resistance yesterday at 278.66. Right now, I would call this a little bit more bullish here today, especially because if you look here, this low from the Monday session was slightly higher than the low here from Wednesday, the 16th. So you could argue low, higher low. Now we're seeing a high, potentially higher high here, potentially looking for a test of that level. That was major resistance back here on the 26th of September. Still in the same consolidative range, just trying to give this a little bit of structure. And based on today, you would expect at least a little bit of follow through. Moving over to 3M and AMD. 3M's not a company that I watch very often, but you can see it had a huge gap up on earnings. Went from around 134.80, 135, and then gapped all the way up to the 140 area, which was the all-time high back here. Now you can see it's falling once again back down to that 55 EMA, falling a little bit after hours. This was a relative high, but it's been a very choppy chart. If you zoom out here on 3M, the stock was much higher. All-time highs all the way here around 216. So around there, it's been cut in half. And the low from this rally is all the way down in the 72 area. So it's doubled since then, all the way up into the 140s. Again, it's a bullish chart in the short term. Earnings probably going to reset this price, pull back a little bit. You got a huge gap to fill all the way down to the 103 area. Interesting chart, probably not going to do anything with it. And then looking at AMD, interesting here as well. You can see big fall, bear flag, big fall. Now this looks like another bear flag setup. Go ahead and copy that here. Add that to the top of this channel. And now this is a potential breakdown. This is why I wanted to highlight this chart here. You can see we're back below this trend. We were below it here. We ended up rallying back into it. So it doesn't mean that it's going to break down immediately. You also have the 55 EMA, which it did overthrow to get a touch there at 152.47. Low of day was 151.91. So we got a touch. My level 151.18. Just barely missed that. But this structure looks quite bearish to me. If it breaks down, it's probably going to see a move similar to this, and then we'll see what happens from there. And if it ends up being another bear flag, you would at least expect a retest of the low of this consolidation, similar to this, where you get a low of the consolidation, bear flag setup, reject from here, breakdown of structure. And then zooming in here a little bit, you can see you would at least expect a retest of the low of the structure if this is a bear flag, similar to this, breakdown, bear flag, breakdown, back to the low here from here. If you sell the breakout, there's still plenty of move in it. And this is a potential breakdown here. So a move to the low of this start is around 14.3%, back down to this low here. See if it ends up playing like that. Momentum and RSI are both pretty bearish. And I would expect this to go a little bit lower. Pretty good setup there on AMD. And then really quickly, just wanted to mention DELL here. We talked about this being a rising wedge, and you can see we got a huge fall here today, over 4%. Held the level 119.96, which was my support. So you can see gapped through the trend, gapped through the 144, and then fell to the support. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. Again, another pretty decent setup. My guess is this will at least go to the 200 down at 116.23, which is about $4 lower from current price. Something to watch here. If this structure continues to break down, similar to the bear flag setup, usually you see a push down to this lowest area here, which would be all the way in the 88 area. So initial price target is about 3% lower. And then if you get that bigger move, something like a medium term move, similar to this move here, that would be about 26.26 to the downside. That usually takes a lot longer. You can see this took from 9 July all the way until 7 August. So about a month for that move. I don't think it's going to happen all in one push, but eventually I would expect this to break down to that lowest level. Again, short term, 3% move. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft, we got Apple down just a little bit, 0.26. Tested the 9 EMA, again, starting to show a little bit of consolidation, falling a little bit, testing some support levels, momentum stepping down, RSI, still kind of neutral there. Structurally, still bullish, still finding resistance at that 237.23 level. And then more interestingly here, we got Microsoft, big breakout, went right to the level. So you can see break of the trend here. My level 429.88 touched that level, ended up pulling back slightly from there. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish, volume coming through here. So we did have a wedge. Now you got a break of that structure. We've been above this before, but this looks like a big impulse style move. I would expect some follow through on this. If 429 breaks, my next level is 440.72, which is the high from this run back here in the beginning of September. Moving over to Meta and NVIDIA, Meta was up over 1% actually, momentum swinging to bullish. Interesting to see that. Back above VWAP, back above the 21, right at the 9 EMA, 581.98. Technically closed above it at 582.01, but falling below it after hours. Still consolidation, bigger push there, more similar to Microsoft. Could be something interesting, could push back up to that high around 602.95. Potentially, especially with that step on momentum. RSI, I would expect it to test the SMA and then break down from there, but could see a little bit of rally before that happens. And then looking at NVIDIA, we had the big push yesterday, hit the trend line, thought we might break out from there, ended up gapping to the level and then selling off slightly down 0.08, so not much. Still want to see 104.76 hold. Would like to see a retest of that level and then a continuation style move. Right now, momentum bullish, RSI overbought, but still bullish. Moving over to Amazon and Alphabet here. Amazon up slightly, not a whole lot, 63 cents on the day. Nearly touched my level, 191.64. That's what we were looking for after the break of that level here at 188.61. Nearly touched it, so continuing to see that potential momentum. Technically bullish, RSI swinging up, got that downtrend similar to Microsoft. Hasn't broken that quite yet. And then Google, update here. Held the trend yesterday and today back above 21 and VWAP after testing support, momentum bullish, RSI slightly bullish. Maybe this is going to follow through to the upside. It is taking a long time. Who knows at this point? As long as the trend continues to hold, that could be a potential bullish play. And then my current price target would be the 144 EMA at 169.13, so about $3 higher. And then behind that, you got the 170.95 level. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, you got staples holding in there up about 0.5%, still in the same region we've been in. Broke the trend big time yesterday, ended up rallying back to it. Looks like a breakdown retest. If it breaks back down, that's going to be quite bearish. If it gets back above it and holds the level, maybe it's going to resume this kind of short-term uptrend we're seeing. Really choppy action. Certainly could go either way at this point. But the more interesting structure for me is discretionary. Look at this. So you have the breakdown, testing support, breakdown, back below my level, 197.14. Closing basis was basically right on top of it. After hours, selling off a little bit. If this is a level break continuation, that could be 193.81, and then a potential push down to that 55 EMA in the 190.25 area. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. This is saying a little bit of a risk off opportunity here, which means markets would be pulling back a little bit. I think discretionary is starting to show some weakness and some potential for weakness across markets, in my opinion. If we extend this out, kind of that same region, if we get another continuation down to that trend line, discretionary is looking pretty weak. Moving over to oil and transports, you can see oil's been kind of in this structure here. We did break that yesterday. We're still holding that resistance at 135.07. We did see it step to bullish momentum for a minute, and then it didn't close there. We're still holding really strong support around this 134.11 area. Momentum, again, slightly bearish, RSI slightly bearish, but this support has held for many days. We've been here since the 15th. We're still here now on the 22nd. Same zone. Want to see this push. And really what I would like here is this to rally up, especially now that we're seeing discretionaries kind of pull back. Oil and gas has been a safe haven here recently. Usually when markets are falling, oil and gas has been doing a little bit better. And I do think it's going to do it. I think we're going to get above this 135 level and close. Right now, 21 EMA is not looking so good. And remember, this is still medium-term downtrend. But again, you have a low, lower low, and then you have a higher low here. Is this going to establish a higher low here and then continue up? It seems like it kind of will. We've been in this consolidation for a while. We got to the same price level back here on 2 August, and that's really the support that's holding. The low from that 2 August level was 133.46. So right in here, which is the low that we touched on the 15th. So far, we haven't retouched that level. We're holding in here. And again, looking like it's consolidating. Oil and gas looking a little bit better here, especially after the candle we saw yesterday. And then transport, slight pullback after hitting this upper trend. Just barely missed it, but depends on how you want to call it. I would say that's pretty dang close. And now we're at the lowest part of this trend here. If it's going to hold, it needs to do it. Momentum says probably not. RSI probably not. 69.29 is the next level to the downside. Moving over to RIOT and Marathon, both of these had good days, 1.85 and 1.39, closing above the level 1878. Want to see it get above the 200, which is your resistance right now at 1930 on Mara. Similarly here on RIOT, 200 sitting at $10.29. Moving over to 20 and 50-day breadth, continuing to see breadth crater here. We saw the big breakdown yesterday, continuation on that selling here today. Again, markets have not really gone with it yet. I think market breadth is going to go lower, and I think markets are going to follow eventually. This is kind of your warning sign. Market breadth cratering back down to this midline, probably going to go lower after this dip low here with the high, lower, low, lower, low coming. Similarly here on 50-day, high, lower, high. Now you have the low, lower, low. Got all the way down to a 60.63, almost hitting the 144 EMA. Think this is going to go lower. And again, markets just have not gone with it yet. Moving over to bond yields. We haven't talked about these in a while. 2-year really hasn't done much since we stopped talking about it. Still at this trend, still at the same 4 level. But look at this 10-year, just continuing to go up. Had a really powerful day Monday, another up day Tuesday. So far for the Wednesday, it's down just a smidgen, but it's back above all the EMAs and SMAs. It's been a crazy run since 3.6, all the way up to nearly 4.25. We've talked about it a bunch of times. Medium term is that this is going to go lower. 4.25 for the 10-year is a pretty high level relative to where we have been, especially with the cutting cycle that we're in. See how it plays out. If this continues to rally, that's not going to be super great for equities. But again, equities just have not gone with it. If it starts to show a little bit of selling, maybe that gives equities a little bit of strength. Right now it is overbought. It's been a strong rally, big move, very consistent, but it hasn't had a major effect on markets yet. And then similarly here on the dollar, another update just continues this straight up ridiculous rally. Your resistance is now 104.41 after we broke the 200 back here on Monday, continuing this rally up pretty much every single day except for very shallow pullbacks. Momentum fading, but price action is king, still looking very bullish. And again, usually this is bearish for markets where you see very powerful rallies, but it hasn't done it quite yet. Moving over to bonds, J&K has now broken down, retested the 21, selling off, holding support right now at 96.51. This is probably going to sell some more. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. If this breaks, 95.61 is the next level. And then looking at TLT, testing the same low, really very little changed, up 9 cents on the day. I said this was an interesting zone here. We've been in this consolidation here since all the way back in June before we had that massive rally. Obviously, this looks very similar to the inverse of your 10-year yield, and I do think this is going to hold support eventually and then rally back up. But right now it is quite bearish. You can also see we do have clear divergence on price. RSI low was back here on the 14th, currently at lower price with a higher RSI read. So I do think it's going to hold up eventually, and then we're going to start to see that change in structure. But right now it doesn't look great. Moving over to the VIX, continuing to hold support at this trend line. Hasn't really touched it yet. Thought we would touch it on the Friday session. Didn't quite get there. Now we're still consolidating in this zone here around the 18.5 area. If it holds the higher low, should be bouncing here soon. We've been here for 3 days, but momentum is bearish, RSI is bearish. Certainly possible that it breaks through there and pushes down to the 144 EMA. Not really giving any clear direction yet, just holding this higher support, waiting to see what happens, if it breaks or if it holds support. Moving over to my accounts, looks like I made a little bit of money on the day, just short of $200. I don't know if I made all of that, but somewhere in there, 175 maybe. IWM was down about $1, held in there, lost most of that, even with the covered call, which was a little bit frustrating, but I have another covered call there, 221 at 88 cents, and that is basically unchanged in the after hours. And then looking at the Qs, same thing here, 494 for tomorrow for $2.63. Made about $200 on that, maybe a little bit more on the day. And then I did grab an XOP position with the positive day, watching it very closely. You saw my alerts. If it starts to fall, I'll definitely take that off. Right now I'm playing for that higher low setup and the push higher. Think it can do it. Like I said, I think it's a safety position right now. I think people are looking for a little bit of security, especially with discretionary starting to sell off a little bit more aggressively. So oil and gas, playing that here in the short term, watching that structure very closely, right in that 134.20, 134.50 area. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of the charts in this current consolidation and some of the warning signs we're seeing across markets. Are they concerning to you? Or is it reassuring that markets have not gone lower, despite breadth going lower and the dollar rocketing higher? Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.